Despite popular belief, ancient Egyptian pharaohs did not spend their days reclining in the shade, having their servants fan them while they were driven around town. They were kept very busy with their royal duties, which took up most of their time. Today, we'll learn what it was like to rule Egypt as a pharaoh. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to History Diary to enjoy our upcoming videos. Pharaohs were the monarchs of ancient Egypt. They oversaw the country's political, cultural, and religious life, while also enjoying the finer things in life, such as wine and fine eating. Pharaohs were known to spend the majority of their time among their subjects. The majority of the royal entourage consisted of court hangers-on like officials, relatives, nobility servants, and royal bodyguards. The royal family had the good fortune to be able to hand-pick their companions, usually bestowing the honor onto close friends and relatives. They were also blessed with the presence of servants who attended to their every need. If you were born into Egypt's royal family, you'd be in a very fortunate position. The pharaohs had servants waiting on them when they awakened in the morning to help them get ready for the day. Those who worked for Pharaoh were stationed so close that they could catch a whiff of his morning breath. The Pharaoh's servants also gave the Pharaohs baths. To emphasize their status, certain emperors, like Hatshepsut, liked to lavishly anoint themselves with expensive oils and perfumes. After a brief wash, an army of style specialists would put everything together, from footwear to wigs. The ancient Egyptian upper class would not have been taken seriously without the pinnacle of social rank. Getting a wig in ancient Egypt was a significant process. In fact, they went so far as to legislate who could and couldn't legally wear wigs. Slave females were strictly prohibited from wearing wigs. Wig quality was directly correlated to social status. A royal's wig was the piece de resistance of their ensemble, and these were the most ornate of the lot. Pharaohs wore wigs to charm their subjects and show off their celestial status. Having so much sway does not come without costs. All of their administrative deeds, as well as their daily habits like eating and sleeping, were regulated by regulations, as the Greek historian Theodorus explains. There are doubts about the accuracy of this assessment. Although Theodorus' description of a highly recommended day may be idealized, Egyptologist. The pharaohs had daily religious and legal duties like attending ceremonies and making judgments. They probably had well-organized schedules that allowed them to complete all of their tasks. As soon as a pharaoh woke up, he was briefed on administrative issues, and he and his team of officials ruled the country. Pharaohs nonetheless rode around in style. A chair that could be lifted off the ground and carried by your attendants without you having to get out of it. The pharaoh and his court used chairs pushed by servants whenever they departed the palace grounds. Being a fan-bearer likely meant you had some sort of close relationship with the pharaoh. It has also been theorized that these fan-bearers served as part of the pharaoh's guards. Pharaohs of Egypt served as much more than mere monarchs. They said they could divine and act as a bridge between humans and the gods. Due to the spiritual significance of their position, they devoted much of their time to religious activities such as scheduling religious appointments, issuing orders for the construction of temples, and participating in rituals. Daily visits to the temple for anointing and sacrifice were described by the Greek historian Theodorus. The sacrifices were probably symbolic in character and served to maintain peace and order in the realm. Even when the pharaohs were unable to attend a religious ceremony in person, their statues were nonetheless on display at the temples. There were benefits to being of royal descent. The common Egyptians subsisted on a diet of bread, beer, vegetables, and fish, while the nobility of Egypt enjoyed a more sumptuous fare. At a royal feast, fresh fruits like dates and figs would be offered alongside more traditional dishes like goose and bull. The royal court of Egypt favored wine, but the cost put it out of reach for the average Egyptian. Despite the widespread practice of monogamy in ancient Egypt, kings were allowed to marry multiple women. They seemed to get a kick out of flaunting their newfound power. Most male pharaohs maintained large harems consisting of dozens or hundreds of wives and concubines, with the great royal wife or principal highest-ranked wife functioning as the head of the household. The fertility of the pharaohs might be ensured by these marriages. It is reported that Ramses I had over 100 children with his many wives and concubines, and they lived in a special section of the palace just for them. But they did have access to things like educators and medical professionals. Pharaohs would take ceremonial processions through the streets, attracting large crowds wherever they went from time to time. And only then they would decide where temples would be built, would pay a visit to the construction site. Only the nobility was allowed to hunt lions. However, pharaohs occasionally encouraged the presence of other aristocrats. Hunting was never an urgent necessity. Even though the pharaohs didn't need to know how to hunt because they were supplied with food, it was nevertheless a common activity for them and their courts. King Tutankhamun, shown in a tomb scene shortly after returning from an ostrich hunt. While ancient Egyptian pharaohs enjoyed playing up their divine status, they were nonetheless just humans like the rest of us. A substantial percentage of them were probably quite sick. Gene pools shrank as a result of high rates of incest and intramarriage. The limping of King Tutankhamun, for instance, was probably hereditary. Even the royal feasts of fat and carbs had an effect. The excessive weight of many pharaohs contributed to heart disease and diabetes. Even inside his own households, pharaohs faced opposition to their reign. Ramses I was assassinated in 1155 BC due to a plot hatched in the harem. Almost definitely Tai, one of her husband's wives, plotted this whole debacle to make her kid king. Hatshep, Sup, and their successor all had to contend with fractious relatives during their reigns. To ensure her status as Egypt's final pharaoh, Cleopatra fought a civil war with her younger brother and husband in 48 BC. Tell us, Would you enjoy the life of a pharaoh in ancient Egypt?